This shrimp throws one of the fastest strikes on Earth, underwater, where speed is supposed to die. Most animals lose power the moment they move. This one gains it. It doesn't swing harder. It doesn't chase faster. It waits. And then it moves so quickly, the water can't stay intact. The punch isn't the weapon. The collapse is water punishes excess. The moment acceleration begins, resistance rises with it. Force spreads sideways before it can stay focused long enough to fracture anything solid. On a reef, that rule decides survival. You see it every day. A predator commits. The prey pivots. The strike lands in water instead of armor. And what looked explosive becomes harmless turbulence within a heartbeat. Underwater, violence has a half-life. Energy leaks into the medium and dissolves before it can accumulate. Fast becomes soft. Direct becomes diffuse. Power fades before it concentrates. That is the environment every hunter here must obey. Groupers shorten distance until they are nearly touching before opening their jaws. Snappers attack from angles that box prey into corners. Barracudas rely on short bursts rather than sustained speed. Reef sharks tilt and adjust because straight-line force bleeds too quickly into open water. Different shapes, different muscles, different strategies, same limit. Underwater, you don't overpower the fluid, you survive inside it. The mantis shrimp does something else entirely. It refuses to play the same game. It doesn't patrol wide territory. It doesn't chase movement across open sand. It stands at the mouth of its burrow like a mechanism waiting for alignment. Small, compact, brightly colored like part of the reef itself. Nothing about it suggests catastrophic force. In water, small bodies pay for mistakes immediately. Move too fast and drag erases acceleration before it matures. Push too hard, and your own structure absorbs the shock. Miss once, and you advertise your location to something larger. So most small hunters remain conservative. Short strikes, rapid retreat, continuous feedback. The mantis shrimp prepares in silence. Before the strike, there is no motion, only measurement. Its eyes rotate independently, scanning depth and distance with unnatural precision. It does not react impulsively. It does not gamble. It waits for geometry, because geometry determines whether the water will cooperate. Strike in open water and force spreads harmlessly into the blue. Strike near rock and the energy has nowhere to escape. Strike when prey is free to move and the medium absorbs everything. Strike when prey is confined and the medium becomes unstable. So it waits for confinement, for prey to drift too close to coral, too close to stone, too close to the boundary that traps force in place. Seconds pass. The reef sways gently with current. Other fish weave through branches of coral. The shrimp remains motionless. Stillness becomes pressure. Pressure becomes inevitability. Then something aligns. There is no warning, no raised limb telegraphing impact. The appendage travels only a short distance. But in that distance, it reaches a speed so extreme, the motion nearly disappears. One frame intact, next frame altered. It feels less like movement and more like reality skipping forward. But muscle alone did not create that instant. The limb becomes a biological spring, loading potential energy into a locked latch. Muscle contracts slowly and safely. The structure stores the stress. If muscle tried to produce that acceleration directly, the limb would fail under its own force. So the shrimp stores time instead of speed. Inside the appendage, elastic components bend incrementally under tension, while nothing dramatic is visible outside. Energy accumulates quietly, held back, contained. Seconds of calm converted into motion too fast to see. When the latch fails, the release is absolute. There is no steering, no correction, no reconsideration. The outcome is locked before contact is confirmed. The limb reaches peak velocity almost instantly, and then it stops, abruptly. But the water does not stop with it. And this is where danger escalates beyond the strike itself. When something moves through water that fast, the liquid cannot reorganize quickly enough to remain stable. Pressure collapses behind the limb faster than equilibrium can compensate. For a fraction of a second, continuity fails. The strike shears the water itself. A cavitation bubble detonates in the wake of the limb. Not air entering from outside, but water separating from itself under extreme stress. That bubble is unstable the moment it exists. Then it implodes, violently. The collapse releases a shockwave more powerful than the punch that created it. Pressure spikes inside a confined space smaller than a grain of sand. Temperatures surge to nearly the surface temperature of the sun. For less than a microsecond, a flash appears underwater, light, born from collapse. For an instant, the medium behaves less like a passive environment and more like an explosive event triggered from within. That is the second hit, and it arrives after the limb has already slowed. The damage outlasts the impact. Shells fracture not at contact, but a fraction later, as if the reef hesitated before breaking. Sometimes the physical strike looks minimal, yet the armor cracks anyway, because the shrimp does not need to crush the shell directly. It only needs to destabilize the water around it. After that, the medium becomes violent on its own. Shells split along hidden fault lines. Carapaces fracture from internal stress they were never designed to withstand. Most predators depend on feedback to survive. Strike, feel resistance, adjust pressure, maintain control. That loop prevents catastrophic overcommitment. The mantis shrimp removes the loop entirely. Once it releases, the sequence plays out exactly as initiated. For most animals, that would be reckless. Here, it is the strategy. Because the true weapon was never the limb, it was instability. The shrimp does not overpower the ocean. It provokes it past its limit. It nudges the medium just far enough beyond stability that the medium collapses inward on itself. That is why it does not strike constantly. Each punch empties stored tension that took time to accumulate. Each punch risks exposure if mistimed. So it waits again, still, calm, until geometry aligns once more. Then another blur, another implosion, another fracture spreading through armor that should have held. Underwater, where speed is punished and excess motion dissolves into softness, this small animal reversed the rule. It does not fight drag. It does not chase power. It rearranges the sequence. When force is limited, you don't add more force. You let something else fail first. The mantis shrimp doesn't break shells. It breaks stability. And when stability breaks inside water, the water becomes the most violent thing in the frame. The shrimp initiates the chain reaction. The medium completes it. And once that collapse begins, there is no correction, no negotiation, no escape. Because when continuity fails in a confined space underwater, the result is not just amplified, it is inevitable.